For this special afternoon meeting, and we started this morning. As I look at the beautiful artwork in front of us, members of council were invited by our friends and neighbors, the Tsleil-Waututh, and we had a very productive, informative exchange this morning, and I feel really set off a nice relationship. So we thank our First Nations friends. We did commit to announce the purchase price of the Sewell's Boathouse. Well, now the West Vancouver Community Art Space, and the council, we paid $2.7 million for that property. And I'm sure if you've seen the assessed values, you will recognize that was a very generous position that the Sewells took for the benefit of not only Horseshoe Bay, but really all of West Vancouver. And we are now, we will be announcing shortly a program to go out and collect the money necessary to renovate the interior of the building by doing naming rights. And finally, I'm happy to announce that about 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon, Council was advised by our planning staff that Eagle Ridge is now officially owned by the municipality, and we invite all of you to come on April 7th. We're going to hold a special council meeting at the foot of Eagle Ridge to officially dedicate that property. And it's a pretty monumental day, and we thank everybody who has been involved in that process for a long time. And so we'll call the meeting to order. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda? It's moved, seconded, moved and seconded. All those in favor, contrary carried. And now we'll have a discussion about our operating and capital budgets. We have both the recommended motion from staff, and we've also had a memorandum from our new Finance and Advisory Committee regarding their recommendations, and I'm very grateful to the people who have stepped forward to work with us and for all of us on this committee. I'm not sure, Isabel, are you going to make a presentation? I think their committee members wanted the opportunity to speak, and I'm quite willing to, with council's approval, allow the floor for anyone else who wishes to address council on this subject.
Your Worship, the staff report is here. Staff are here to answer questions, but we don't have a presentation.
Fair enough.
So we're quite happy to have the.
Thank you. Thank you. And just so everyone is aware, obviously members of council have spent a lot of time, as has our finance committee, on this subject. So I think everybody's quite alive to all of the various options. So is, gentlemen, anyone who wants to make a presentation from the Finance Committee? Mr. Smith, thanks for joining us this evening, and Mr. Patterson, thank you so much for your contribution to the community. We are grateful.
Thank you very much, Your Honor, and this is Mike Patterson and myself, Don Smith, and
perhaps you could introduce our fellow colleagues from the Finance Committee as well who are here this evening.
Oh, absolutely. I'm hoping we might actually have all 6 non-council members present either virtually or here, but the other 2 members who are physically here are John Robertson and Michael Evison, who is obviously very well known to.
Yes, Mr. Evison was a former member of this council, and it is always great to see him. Great to see both of you.
Sorry, I've clicked on this, and oh, not at all.
I just need to bring it up on
Yep.
the reading screen.
Perfect.
Do you want to show it as a slideshow?
Yes, that would be ideal.
Thanks. Did you want to mention any other members that are here?
Yes, that would be a great idea. Sorry, the other two members of the committee who are not physically present are Graham McIsaac, who is in New Zealand at the present time, and I believe is probably attending virtually, and the other is Joel James, who is also in the opposite end of the world.
No, he's actually back, and I
Oh.
believe he's attending virtually as well.
Oh, I see. Excellent. So,
Just back.
including the mayor and Councillor Watt, we have all members of the committee present. Actually, in terms of the presentation, which is really just a summary of the information that's in our report to Council, first slide is actually the members of the committee.
How did you get this old picture of me snowboarding?
I thought it was Linda. So our committee, and just a little bit of background, the committee originated almost a year ago at the instigation of the mayor to create a finance and revenue roundtable, and that evolved into a formal committee of council, a select committee of council in the fall of 2024. Apart from the mayor and Councillor Watt as members of the committee, the other six have a wealth of financial experience and expertise. We have three of the other six are CPAs, all of whom have served as chief financial officers of different organizations, have worked for one or other of the major global accounting firms, similar to KPMG, the district's auditor. One is, as we mentioned, Mr. Evison, who not only is a qualified accountant, but has the same experience as you have as a member of council. So that brings a wealth of experience to the table. We've got members who've got an academic background in money banking and finance and a career in financial services, and one of our members who spent a career in the public sector, ultimately responsible for the management, construction, maintenance and oversight of about $10 billion of public sector infrastructure. So a lot of relevant experience on the committee, and the purpose of the committee is to assist council and bring to the benefit of council not only experience and expertise, but also the time to devote to this issue. We're so conscious that council has many, many responsibilities and does not have the time to spend dozens of hours, if not hundreds of hours, on one particular area. So we're here to serve both council and the community at large. Just more specifically on our mandate, and this is embodied in the terms of reference that this council adopted on November 18th of last year for the committee. We have a dual mandate. One is to identify revenue opportunities for the district, but the other is finance, which obviously is the topic of today. And very specifically, our mandate in the terms of reference is to provide advice and recommendations to this council on the district's finances, including budgets, financial plans, and with the overriding principle of prudent financial management. And also specifically to provide the district, provide council with advice concerning the what we're talking about today, which is the annual operating and capital budgets and the property tax changes. So this is a core aspect of our responsibilities. The next few slides are the slides that are in our report, but they're meant to provide something of a financial history for the district on some key financial metrics. And I think the next three slides you'll see how the district has evolved from a financial standpoint and from a situation 10 years ago where the district's finances were much weaker. And thanks to the good guidance of staff and council, the district's finances are in a very strong position at the present time, and that is something that's built up over the last decade. So, for example, the first one, cash and investments, and this is important because property taxes, the purpose of property taxes is to yield cash to come to the district, and I could just yeah, I was just looking for the figure that was up there, but well, there it is, 350 million. So it's quite apparent that in almost all years the district has generated more cash than it has actually spent, and this has built up the financial strength of the district. Cash and investments are one thing, but probably one of the best measures of the financial strength of a municipality is its net financial assets, which is the cash and investments plus other assets, financial assets of the district, such as accounts receivable, net of payables and debt and liabilities like deferred DCCs. So the net financial assets, again, have built up very strongly over the last 10 years, going from virtually zero to 143 million at the end of 2023.
Mr. Smith, may I just jump in with a quick observation and comment? I can't help but notice, Ms. Gordon, what year did you start with the District of West Vancouver?
2015.
Thank you.
Well,
I think that speaks for itself.
Ms. Gordon and the finance staff have to take a great deal of credit for the financial situation that the district is in at the present time. And the last metric is reserve funds and unappropriated surplus or deficit. And again, over the space of 10 years, going from almost zero, a small positive number, up to 203 million. Sorry, I've got a little on the screen here. There's a little thing that blanks out the very right-hand column. So these reserve funds, as you know, are monies that the district has accumulated and are set aside for a variety of different purposes, such as the utilities that the district is responsible for, and a whole variety of other purposes. The last graph that we've got, which is not in the in our report but might be of interest to you, is just to compare West Vancouver with our counterparts on the North Shore, the district and city of North Vancouver, using these three metrics. And this also highlights the fact that the district is in a strong financial position and on a relative basis is in a somewhat better position than both the district and the city. So, for example, what this is showing is our financial assets on a per capita basis. In other words, it adjusts for the difference in population between the three municipalities. So, for example, as far as cash and investments are concerned, per capita, West Vancouver has $66,715 per capita, and the district and city are sitting at $3,648 per capita. Net financial assets, West Vancouver, $31.41 per capita. The district and the city are at $17.69 and $29.82. And lastly, in terms of reserves, district $3,926 per capita, and the district and city of North Vancouver at $2,150 and $3,096. So not massive differences, but in all respects, the district's in a relatively good financial position.
Wouldn't it be nice if our provincial and federal budgets looked like this?
Exactly. It is very interesting to see the difference in the different levels of government, and I think this is something that is particularly specific to BC, because your counterparts in other parts of the country, municipalities and cities, are in not nearly the same sort of financial position as the municipalities, particularly in the Lower Mainland. And having said that West Vancouver is in a strong position relative to its immediate counterparts, West Vancouver is not in the strongest position of all the municipalities in Metro Vancouver.
Burnaby takes the lead.
Burnaby takes the lead, closely followed by Coquitlam, and a lot of that has been due to the development that has occurred in these municipalities. But on the other hand, West Vancouver is in a much better position than the city of Vancouver itself, for example. If the committee has been through all the budget materials that the finance staff have prepared, and we're, apart from what we've talked about in terms of the financial strength of the district, we should also commend the staff of the district for what appears to be a relatively prudent approach to the operational side of the budget. There are no planned expenses that do not make sense. The level of staffing that is planned for 2025 is the same level as we left 2024. So there's obviously been a real focus on efficiency, which is a very good thing. We haven't made any specific recommendations with respect to all of the operational aspects of the budget, but this particular slide focuses on the one area called general government expenditures, and this is page 8 in the district's 2025 preliminary financial plan, and these represent $22 million of the annual budget for 2025, so a significant amount if you consider that the full year's property taxes are approximately $100 million. This is a significant component of it, and there's a number of items here that are not cast in stone. They involve a fair amount of discretion, and from council's standpoint, there is an opportunity to make decisions within a reasonable range. If I could just touch on 2 or 3 of these, the first item is severance and collective bargaining, which is also in the financial statements, the wage contingency reserve. So essentially there is $3 million here that would have the effect of topping up this reserve. So these are funds that are not actually budgeted to be paid in 2025, but cover a contingency in case there is reason for additional expenses. In our committee's opinion, $3 million is not necessary at the present time, and there's certainly scope for reducing this. And I'm very conscious that with this and one other item, that these are also a part of the staff report to council. There are some others that fall into the same category. Legal is not a planned expense, but is essentially a transfer to a legal reserve fund that can then be used for legal expenses as they occur. But if there's more prudent management of our legal costs, which we're conscious has been the case over the course of the last year, that it may not be as necessary to have as large amount there. The other two I'd mention would be the Innovation Fund, which is also part of the staff report. And finally, the bottom item, provisional fringe benefit expenditures, $1.5 million. Again, this is effectively a contingency reserve, as distinct from something that is relates to expected or projected actual expenditures in 2025. There are other things on this page that are real expenditures in the year, like property and liability insurance and so on. But there are some items that we've identified as giving a certain degree of discretion to council in setting the level of the budget for 2025. So the situation is that the starting point was because of increases in costs, and the biggest of which is wage settlements for the various components of the district staff. There was a shortfall of $4.48 million that has to be covered, whether it's by property tax increases or otherwise. We have identified these 7 possible ways of mitigating the increase in property taxes. In the absence of any of these, we would be looking, and again, I think as per the staff report, at an increase in property taxes of 3.7% operating plus presumably another 1% for the increase in the asset levy, so 4.7%. So if it's intended to bring the increase down below that, sorry, did I say 3? It should be 4.7 plus 1 is 5.7, was really the starting point in the absence of these. The first 2 of these are reflected in the staff report, the elimination of the Innovation Fund. It's not that innovation is a good thing, but the other side of the coin is that effectively this is $953 million of tax.
953,000.
Sorry, thank you. Just a
Slight
slip of the tongue there. 953,000 that not planned expenditures, but are a possible reserve for innovation. But that doesn't in any way preclude innovation from occurring, but it probably isn't necessary to add that onto the tax bill. Reduction in the wage contingency reserve. It was for the last year or thereabouts has been set at $3 million, and our view is that could be reduced by $1 million to $2 million. The staff report is suggesting that be reduced by the equivalent of a 1% reduction in the tax rate, which would be another $953,000, which is fine. Our suggestion is in that range, either $1 million or $953,000. The third, and this is an important one, that the districts had a pattern on a relatively regular basis of generating financial surpluses each year. And to some extent, that means that tax rates could have been lower in past years had we known in advance what was going to be spent and the budgeting matched what was the actual expenses that were incurred. Up until now, surpluses have not been used to mitigate future years' tax increases, and I think it's important that we look at all of the options with respect to the utilization of surpluses, putting them into reserves or applying against debt is not the only uses of surplus, and we would recommend that a portion of last year's operating surplus be used to bring down the tax rate to a 2% operating levy increase. There are other possible ways of mitigating the tax increase. We have not recommended any of the others, but just to be clear, there's potential of several $1 million that could be available with a sharpening of the pencil on a number of items in the budget. We're conscious that when the district carried out a survey in the last month or so, that a high proportion of the public that responded to the survey were actually advocating for no tax increase at all. That's not what either staff is recommending or the committee is recommending. But we're very conscious that the public is not enthusiastic about tax increases.
And that's something that's never changed. Could I just interrupt, if I may? Are you open for questions and discussion?
Absolutely.
I recognize my colleagues would like a question, starting with Councillor Gambioli.
Sorry, yeah, actually, I'm looking at my questions, and all my questions are related to staff.
Okay. Thank you. Who was Councillor Snyder?
Yes. So first off, I just want to say I'm very impressed with, I'm going to refer to it as the FRAC committee, but very impressed with the credentials and the skill set, far greater than anything that I would be able to contribute. So much appreciated for all of the hard work and all the comments you made. This is sort of I believe I already know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask Ms. Gordon the question before I ask you the question. Ms. Gordon, my understanding is that you have advised previously during the process that it would require a 2% increase in order for us to maintain what you call the optimal level for the asset levy. Is that still the position?
That's still the position, yes, Your Worship.
Okay, so I guess my question is more so in regards to the asset levy, and I understand that your committee is recommending a 1% increase with the asset levy, indicating in your report that you believe that the proposed asset levy is sufficient to meet the district's planned capital expenditures, both asset maintenance and asset purchases. I'm one that would love to see the most minimal tax increase, as everybody else would be, because we all have to pay it. But I'm also cognizant of the fact that we have a responsibility also moving forward to protect our assets. So I'm just wondering, knowing that Ms. Gordon and the finance team are suggesting that it would require a 2% asset levy to maintain the optimal level so that we're protecting our assets, and the committee is recommending a 1%. So maybe you could expand on that for me.
Certainly. Our committee is not recommending a higher increase in the asset levy above 1%. I think it's important to recognize that the asset levy is cumulative. Even if there was no increase in the asset levy, we would still be talking about levying the same amount as we did last year, which is $15.5 million. So when we talk about an increase in the asset levy, it would be an increase over and above what is already built into the tax rates. The asset levy is related to a long-term plan with respect to the maintenance of our capital assets. We're not talking about something that is a necessity for the next 12 months or thereabouts. It's part of a long-term plan. And what is not done this year, Council has the ability to gradually increase or change the asset levy in future years. The reality is that it is not going to affect the ability of Council or staff to maintain the assets this year, whether or not the asset levy is 0%, 1%, or 2%. It's part of a long-term plan. And I think that if Council is agreeable, our committee would like to, over the course of the next year, be able to do a more detailed analysis of our long-term capital plans and work with staff on that basis so that we can come back to Council with appropriate advice on that. But, obviously raising more money is good in terms of the reserves and so on, but it isn't necessary right at this point in time. Council has the option to revisit this next year, the year after, and so on. And I might mention that while we're talking today specifically about the operating levy and the asset levy, that this is also in the context of the highest utility tax increases that the public has seen maybe ever. So while you could say it's prudent for the district to be raising more money rather than less money, the other side of the coin is it prudent for people to be paying more in terms of taxes? And one of the things that we place a great deal of emphasis on is relating the district's tax increases to the rate of inflation, because that underlies increases in wages, increase in pensions, people's ability to pay. So you can't have a situation where you get tax increases that are unlinked to the ability to pay. And our view is that 3% is probably as much as would be prudently appropriate to charge this year, particularly in the light of some of these other factors.
Can I jump in for a second? I just wanted to jump in, Scott. The 1% almost gets you to where you need to be. Like, there's still have a shortfall. You're pulling some money from operating. Looks like the shortfall is about $1.5 million or so. And staff had identified items that they could push out a little bit to bridge that gap. So you're basically there with the 1%. The 2% is sort of unnecessary this particular year, given the strategy of staff to kind of push things out. You achieve what you need to achieve this year with the 1%.
Thank you.
We've
Councillor
also
White?
been, I believe the asset levy was initiated around about 2016 and has gradually been increased every year, and it's now up to a substantial amount. With this, with a 1% increase, it'll be $16.5 million in 2025. And I think it's important to recognize that almost every year up until now, the district has actually been spending less than it has been taking in. So it's not as if the money has been going out to spend on these various things and not being covered by the taxes that the district has levied. The taxes that the district's levied over the last 10 years have been more than sufficient to cover all of the costs. So to the extent that there's deferred maintenance, it's not because there's a lack of money. It's, if the district wanted to prioritize various things over the course of the next 1, 2, 3 years, it has the financial wherewithal to do that.
Thank you. Can we've still got other questions, if I may. Councillor Watt?
Actually, I was looking over at Ms. Gordon, and you looked like you were reacting. Do you have any comments on that before I go ahead?
I'll just make a couple of comments. We have not had the opportunity to sit down with the Finance and Revenue Advisory Committee and go over the capital budget in depth, or the rationale for the asset levy. So some assumptions have been spoken about here and made that, in fact, I really can't agree with. I'll just speak to one thing, which is about the amount of money that the asset levy raises versus how much is spent. We have a public procurement process which we have to follow. We are required to follow that. We are not allowed to begin doing our procurement until our budgets are approved. So it'll be, April before we, in fact, can begin our process. What this means is that the money that we levy for the asset levy, yes, we take it, we put it into the reserves, we go through our public procurement process, and of course we hold on to the money for as long as we can. We do not pay the bill until the very end of the process, because in the meantime, of course, we have the money invested. So when you're looking at the graphs, which Mr. Smith has taken from our annual report, what you're looking at is basically the fact that we are holding on to the asset levy and it's cycling through. And while we're holding it for 2 or 3 years, as we complete the projects, we have the money invested. And this, of course, is a big change from when I came in 2016, where there was, in fact, no money being set aside for maintenance of the assets. The other thing about the asset levy to realize is that how much money is needed for the asset levy is relative to what you're trying to maintain. This is exactly what we do. We go through and look at the state and condition of the assets and make projections about what it is that needs to be done to maintain these assets. We have assets here in West Vancouver that are not the same as what they have in City of North Vancouver or District of North Van or Burnaby or any other municipality for that matter. So we are concerned with how much it costs to maintain the assets here. Others are, I can tell you because I worked in City of North Vancouver for a very long time, that their assets are generally, maybe not at this point because we've done better in the past 10 years, but they are generally in better shape. So they don't need as much maintenance. Also, they're compact. So, this helps them in terms of what they're trying to maintain. There is a lot to understand about behind these numbers, and we have only begin to work with the committee. So I think, particularly on the capital and asset levy side, there's quite a lot of more work to be done. But the one thing I will caution council and the public here is that, as Councillor Snyder pointed out, our calculations show that we are still not investing on an annual basis what we need to in order to maintain our assets. And it, in fact, does not really even speak to the fact that we have assets which are aging, such as, for instance, the ice arena, which is over 50 years old, which probably need to be replaced. So if we were, I wish we were building up funds into the asset accounts, because those funds are definitely going to be needed within the next 10 years. All of this are things that we can certainly go over with the committee in great depth, and we can have the project managers come in and speak to. But we are I just want to assure council and the public that we are managing this very, very carefully, and we do not have excess, in my opinion, excess funds on hand. We have what we need. And, we're going to do everything we can, given the financial uncertainty that we're all facing with the international situation, to make those dollars go as far as possible. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Ms. Gordon.
Yeah.
Interestingly, though, both staff and the committee are recommending the same thing on the asset levy for this year.
Yeah, we'd certainly welcome the opportunity to work with Ms. Gordon and her staff over the course of the next year to develop a more concrete plan going forward. While our committee's report doesn't explicitly mention the capital budget, we have reviewed the capital budget as it is presented in the 2025 preliminary financial plan, and we have no specific concerns with it. It is very detailed, and we've had an opportunity to go through it. So the fact that there's no specific recommendation is really implies that the committee has been comfortable with the capital budget, and would presume that council would proceed as staff has recommended there. I'm conscious that the capital budget that was presented in the preliminary financial plan was based on the assumption of a 1% increase in the asset levy. Certainly 2% would be more money to put aside, but we would suggest that this is probably not the most prudent thing to do this year, particularly given some of the other factors that are in play, including, as I mentioned, the utility tax increase that we're facing this year.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Watt.
Yeah, so, it's certainly been a pleasure to work with all of you over the course of this past year, and, I've been astonished by the recommendations that have come forward and the sheer volume of work and hours that you've all put into it. And, it's obviously a delicate balance in what we bring in and what we're able to achieve. But, I hearken back to some of the earlier graphs that Mr. Smith showed. And, it's an absolute indisputable fact that taxation has outstripped, at all three levels of government, has outstripped inflation. And at this point, it may just be on a wing and a prayer, but I really hope that the metro mayors and CAOs are able to collectively rein in some of these bargaining situations with the unions that have put us all in this position. I mean, that cannot continue, and I realize that we're a small player in that equation. But I'm going to save most of my comments for later, but I just want to say that based on the recommendations and analysis that this committee has put toward our financial situation, and the stellar work that Ms. Gordon has done over the past 10, 12 years to bring us to the position that we're in, I have incredible confidence that over the course of the next year, as we now are afforded the opportunity and the time to dive deeper into the 2026 budget and to look at more revenue and generating mechanisms and abilities to cut costs, that we will be in a position at this time next year to put more into our asset levy should it be required.
Thank you, Councillor Watt. Councillor Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to continue on a little bit with this discussion of the asset levy, and I guess this question is to Ms. Gordon. I mean, could it be said that we're still playing catch up with the asset levy in order to achieve those, you had often referred to as a sustainable level of funding for facility maintenance over the long term?
Your Worship, yes, that is a statement that I would agree with, that we still have a way to go. It may be, given the way costs are rising in the construction sector, that council will be asked every year from now on to provide another 1%. But the fact of the matter is that 10 years ago, when the asset levy was established, there was a very significant deferred maintenance deficit, which we have been trying to struggle to eliminate. And we still aren't there. In the meantime, costs have risen. The suite of assets has actually gotten greater. And so it's a continual struggle to get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gordon.
Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
I haven't
Oh,
quite
sorry.
finished. A
Sorry,
little
Councillor.
follow-up to this, because I think it's really quite important. My understanding is that our deferred maintenance deficit, in fact, is costing us money. And the fact that, in putting it in the simplest of terms, that if we have something that's on our maintenance schedule optimally to deal with in 2025, say, and we defer it to 2026 or 2027, the cost of doing that same maintenance is going to cost us more, and perhaps more, arguably more, than the funds we would have set aside to do it. So does that make any sense at all to you?
Your Worship, again, I would certainly agree with that statement for a couple of reasons. I mean, if you just think of, for instance, your own car, your own automobile, if you do not do the annual maintenance, the performance of the car will definitely deteriorate. And in fact, it may break down, which may cost you quite a bit. And we are in that position with some of our boilers, some of the roofs of some of our buildings, and so on. There's only so much you can do to kind of patch things up and keep them going. So, and we're well familiar with what can be done, and we do it, and we do, in fact, get very well. We manage to make our equipment lasts longer than what is in fact the recommended useful life. We routinely do that, but in some cases, you know, as Mr. Smith mentioned, yes, you can postpone things into the future, but as Councilor Lambert just said, you may be running a risk when you do that. The other reason that I would have to agree with that is that we have, over the past 10 years, seen increases in construction costs, and construction is what generally we are doing out there with the roads and so on, and buildings. We have seen those well in excess of consumer inflation. In various years, they've been running at 10 and 14%. With the situation we're facing now, where we have this uncertainty, international tariffs, we really don't know what things are going to be costing. We anticipate that we will see more cost increases. So what you can do today may cost you, if you don't do it, may cost you a great deal more tomorrow. And that's just a fact of the way the world seems to be working right now.
So just a final comment on that again, if we were trying to be as responsible as we could be in dealing with these deficits, that we should, in an ideal world, be funding the asset levy to the point where we achieve, for what we understand today at least, to be a sustainable level of funding. So we're at $15.5 million a year now. 1% will put it at $16.5 million. But I think our optimal level is somewhere around 20 million or something like that, I believe, last week.
So I don't have the figures in front of me, but yes, the optimal level would require another 1%, which is not to say that in the following year it might require another 1% again. But I am also very sensitive to the topic that Mr. Smith just raised, which is we've seen extraordinary increases in the utility area here on the North Shore, and people generally do sort of add the whole thing together in their minds. And for people, particularly on fixed incomes, this is already very challenging. So this is the reason staff are not recommending going to the 2%. If considered in isolation, the issue of the asset levy, it would be something we'd recommend, but we can't really consider this in isolation. We have to think about what people are going to be paying in total, and given the situation with the utilities, it seems like this might not be the year to be increasing things maybe more than a minimal level.
Yeah, I could appreciate that, and I just have one last comment that in crafting the budgets for this year and with some of the recommendations that the Finance and Revenue Advisory Committee are making, they've done an astounding job of advocating for and making a case for an operating levy that's considerably lower than what we had anticipated when staff had put forward the 1% for the asset levy increase. And, I understand that when staff makes their presentations or their proposals to council, they are doing it with a view towards what the taxpayer can afford and what seems to be reasonable and logical under any given circumstance. So given that we are doing considerably better, or could be doing considerably better on the operating levy, then that argument about the additional burden, at least from where we started out on this exercise, doesn't really hold, and we should be able to absorb a 2% increase in the asset levy in the total scheme of things.
Your Worship, if I might, I would like to make a comment on what is being proposed for the operating levy. The actual required operating levy percentage is still 5.7% in order to match the revenues to the expenditures. But what the committee have identified is that there are certain areas where the district has set aside what you might call savings in a savings account. And they are suggesting that perhaps we don't need those savings as much as perhaps we thought we did, and that a better use of them would be to subsidize the tax rate increase. That is a one-time use of funds. In other words, you spend that money out of the savings account, it's gone. It's not there next year. Where, if you increase the taxes, then the taxes are there and they kind of go on the following year. So we've had to consider very carefully as staff whether, in fact, we can also recommend using savings, and we are. Our staff report is recommending using savings, and it's for the reasons that I outlined, because I am very sympathetic to the people who are facing cost increases at the grocery store and at the gas pump and everywhere else that they turn. And we want to try to be, as reasonable as possible. So I am agreeing with the committee that use of savings in this situation is something that can be recommended. Whereas ordinarily, best practice would be, in fact, to set those aside to pay down debt, or, in fact, to put them in the asset account so that we could be setting aside more funds for managing the assets. But in this particular situation that we're facing, and with the financial uncertainty that we're facing in the future, I mean, we really have no idea what, by the middle of this year, in July, what kinds of prices we're going to be seeing for things. It's something that we're wrestling with right now. Like, how do we change the way that we procure things? How do we try to ensure that we get value for money in a situation like this? So that is why we have put forward the recommendation to use savings. But I want to be very clear to council and the public that that is what is happening. In fact, the costs, which drove the 5.7% in recommended increase, will still be there next year. But there are options that the committee has wanted to look into, and that council are looking into, to in fact increase revenues. And we'll be having to look very carefully at all of those things. We're going to be facing a really challenging year. There's no question about it. I'm hopeful that we will manage. I know we have a really great staff here and that we will manage, but I just want to be clear that in fact, this is an unusual situation and we're making an unusual recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gordon. Just before calling on Councillor Thompson, just to put a little bit of an optimistic outlook as well, we will see, we anticipate seeing significantly more revenue potential in 2026, given the passage of Cypress Village, the reassessment of properties. There is reason for some community optimism, just as the ability to generate more revenue without increasing costs. But I'll go over to Councillor Thompson.
No, thank you for that. This is a fantastic discussion. I thank everybody for looking at this differently and raising these new directions of how we could could tackle keeping our tax rate low. My concerns, like my colleagues, are about this asset levy. I felt quite committed over the last few years. Last year, I think we did 4%. I understand that this is a really important thing to do. But with reducing our operating levy, is there any disconnect to having enough people and services to actually do the work we want to do? And I'm kind of looking for an example of by reducing the asset levy from 2 to 1. Can you give us an example of what might not be done this year that would have been? And again, I'm just trying to factor in, do we actually have the staff and the resources and everything to tackle everything that we're planning on doing?
So thank you, Councillor Thompson. You really are, I think, asking two different questions. One is, do we have the staff that we need right now to carry out the program that we're asking to be funded? And I would say, I'm not really the person to actually speak to that. We should have, the various other directors here to speak to it. Mm-hmm. I do hear that there are challenges, but I think that yes, we do. And we're all very determined to be very strategic, not that we're not strategic now, but we're going to have to be even more strategic in how we prioritize what we're spending our time on and our resources to get things done. And I think, generally staff here are very focused on completing projects and getting things done as quickly as we can, although we have many obstacles to overcome to do that. I think in terms of the financial resources, once again, we have what I think it's not that there could not be more. I cannot tell you the specific projects. I can get that information because, in fact, we start with a much longer list of projects, and then we do basically what we call triaging. Mm. These things are green lighted, they have to be done. These things are yellow, we'll get to them if we can. These things are red, they're going to have to be postponed, and so on. And then we have other considerations come up all the time. We try to avoid having what I call scope creep. In other words, we start working on something and someone goes, well, while we're doing this, it would be a really good idea if we did that. And we're like, no, it would be a really good idea if we stuck to our knitting here, and so on. So we try to avoid that. I will say that we generally manage to fund the required equipment replacements, particularly in the public safety area, because they have standards and they simply, you simply cannot use equipment beyond a certain point in the fire service, for instance. So we do fund those things. We are reasonably good at funding what the infrastructure, which is basically the roads and everything that goes with managing the traffics. Although we could do better. I mean, and everyone who drives around here knows of places where we could do better. The facilities are where we have probably our biggest challenges because facilities projects tend to be expensive. You need a large amount of money to replace a roof on a building like this, for instance. And so probably if I were to say, what would we do if we got the extra, we would do more in the facilities area. Yeah. That's what we would do.
Okay. I'm just going to make a few comments because I've got the mic and then you don't have to come back to me. But I do really appreciate this creative new way of looking at the budget and ways we can bring down the tax rate. It's, it is a year, I think, to explore ways of doing things. Maybe not long-term best practices, but I do like the idea of reducing the tax rate through some of our reserves. The asset levy still gives me some concerns, and I think it is clearly an area that we would like to know more about before we start hacking away at that. Understanding better how you actually build it from year to year and anticipate it. That would be a great discussion for next year. But other than that, I'm just really pleased with everything I'm seeing. Looking at certain, the innovation fund, letting that go, things that we don't really seem to be using productively. So I'm pleased, and those are my comments.
Now, Councillor Gambioli. you were the first up, and then your questions were for staff, and we've kind of moved all over.
Kind of
so.
asked them to staff too, so should I ask my questions now? or-
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
But let me actually, can I just ask, gentlemen, are you pretty much finished the presentation?
Oh, I think so. The final slide was the specific recommendation
Got
that you
it.
see, which is very close to what was the recommendation in the staff report. The only difference really is the very bottom item, which is small in the whole scheme of things, which is to utilize a small portion of the surplus from 2024. If I might comment on the discussion about the asset levy, I fully understand the concern about the maintenance of our assets and so on. Part of the issue, it seems to us, is probably the issue of priorities. And one of the things that the committee has identified with, if council so wishes, is for us to really take a thorough look at the reserve structure of the district over the course of the next several months. And, there's, to Ms. Gordon's point about the car that's not being maintained, of course you've got to maintain something like that. But if you've got funds for vacations and entertainment and a whole variety of other things, the issue becomes one of priorities. And clearly the maintenance of our assets has to be a very high priority for the district. So I think part of the issue of looking at some of these things before decisions are made next year is to really just make sure that the priorities are right, and that we're not in a situation that we're not doing the things that we should be doing with our assets, but at the same time we're accumulating funds in the bank. That may not be the right balance.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Councillor Gambioli.
Okay, so I guess Finance has given a bit of feedback, but just in general, is there any more feedback that you would like to give us related to the report and recommendations from the new committee?
Your Worship, as I said, the staff recommendation is very close to what the committee has ended up recommending. I think we've worked closely with the committee, as closely as we can, but there's many more things that the committee can work on and look into, and of course we're going to be there to support that. I think the presentation, it's not exactly the presentation I would have given if I was asked to give a presentation. I would have given some more breakdown of the numbers. The only thing that I will say is that if I am asked, is the district in a sort of flush financial position, I would have to say I don't think so. I think the district is now in a reasonable financial position. When I started 10 years ago, the district was in deficit. The district was in a not a very good financial position. And staff, myself, and the rest of the finance staff, and the rest of the staff here at the district have worked very, very hard over the past 10 years to put the district in a reasonable financial position. The district is now in a position where it has most of the money on hand, not all, but most, that it needs to maintain the suite of assets that it has. And it has most of the likely contingencies covered. There are funds available for the things. Contingencies are things that we think are likely to happen, but we're not exactly sure when. And so we set aside money for them. Things like we have what's called a weather-related reserve, because we know that there will be damage from weather events. It might be windstorm, snowstorm, might be a flood. We've had all of those things. And we've had damage from them. So we know that we have to set aside money for that because those things are going to come up. So we have most of our contingencies covered. So that's part of our risk management strategy. We're managing our risks. That puts us in a strong position to meet the future. But I don't think we have cause for complacency, that we have a lot of extra money lying around somewhere. I would not
well, Ms.
say
Gordon,
that.
I think you can take great comfort in the remarks from our independent Finance and Revenue Committee that recognizes the outstanding job you've done. And
Your Worship, if I might say one more thing, I think I may have misspoken earlier when I said 5.7 was required to balance the operating budget, or I think I implied that. It's actually 4.7 that's required to balance the operating budget, and then there was a 1%, in my mind, already added on asset levy. But council, quite rightly, I think, has been discussing the asset levy separately from the operating, and so it's 4.7 plus 1. Thank you.
Gentlemen, if that is the end, oh, sorry, Councillor Cassidy and then Councillor Watt. Oh, Councillor Gambioli still has the mic.
Thanks. Thank you. So, that just reminds me that, as an organization, the district is only as successful as their staff, I believe. So, again, I'll also thank you, Ms. Gordon, especially you, because as we can see from the history, we started improving right around the time you got here. And we're in a very reasonable position. I think that you're very modest. But anyway, thank you for all your work and your team as well. We have great staff, and I want to thank you. So as a result, we're in a fortunate position of having the potential sources to offset the budget. And so my question, I guess, is related to the staff report, which says that best practice dictates that surplus reserve funds no longer required for their original purpose should be reallocated to achieve one of two strategic objectives: debt reduction and asset reserve enhancement. So I guess my question is, why then are we not proposing, if we have surplus reserve funds, to do either one of those things and to reduce the operating levy instead?
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Gambioli, from a purely financial point of view, your best option, if you have the funds available, is to pay down debt. And particularly in the situation we are in here at the District of West Vancouver. When we borrowed the money, and I think at this point I should clarify, the debt that we are talking about is what the funds that were borrowed to renovate this building. So when that money was borrowed, we were at the bottom of the market. We got a fantastic borrowing rate of less than 3%. We all are required to borrow through the Municipal Finance Authority and to renew our debt every 10 years. So the 10 years is coming up. We will not get that rate again. We were very fortunate in getting that extremely low rate because we were able to take the money that we had on hand and invest it and get a higher rate. But that situation isn't going to be true going forward. So we can't get a better return on the investment than by paying down the debt. So paying down the debt from a purely financial point of view would be the recommended option. However, I think I spoke earlier about the fact that this is an extraordinary year in terms of the costs that are being imposed on the public, particularly from the utility point of view. And so I think that, it's totally council's decision, but staff are recommending that if council decides that this is the year to use those savings to subsidize the tax rate increase, staff are actually supportive of that.
Thank you, Ms. Gordon. I would just add to that, I for one would love to see us be out of debt. I think there is in 2025 and 2026 some opportunities that will come forward where we will generate revenue that will allow us to achieve at least part, if not all of that.
And we'll continue, of course, to look for efficiencies as well. So,
yes,
which
I think there is a real opportunity for us to finish out at least this council's term with the municipality being in a very good financial position. Councillor Gambioli, I don't want to.
Two more questions.
Two more.
Where are we at with including our natural capital assets in our budget?
Interestingly enough, we also had question from Mr. Tupper from the British Pacific Properties. He asked exactly the same question. So Ms. Keith actually answered him, and she's not here, but I'm going to try to repeat what she said. We have been focusing on our trees, and we have in fact now done an inventory of our public trees, and we have each individual tree input into our system. And I mean, maybe Parks could speak more to that, but we have each individual tree there, so we are making progress. What we're going to do next, we're not quite sure, but we've been looking into options of how we might do this. It turns out to be a very challenging problem. However, the David Suzuki Foundation, the Natural Assets Initiative, and there are others out there who now have developed tools for accounting for natural assets. We're not getting much support from the accounting profession, and I don't think we will anytime soon, but that's okay. We're just going to kind of forge on our own path. The key, I think, is to understand the state and condition of the assets as well as we can, and then to create a way of valuing the ecosystem services, which we did in our original inventory, mostly so that we can compare to ourselves. Like, how are we doing? Are we enhancing our natural assets, or in fact, are we losing them? So this is what we're trying to do, and we will be looking into getting some of these tools. I will just say, this is the kind of thing that the Innovation Fund would have been funding. However, we also have the Environmental Fund, and we have other funding, which I hope is still going to be coming to us from the province. It's not really clear. Their budget is tomorrow, and we'll see what it says. But we will, this is a priority, and we will be moving it forward. Thank you.
I would love to be part of the conversation and have the committee discuss this natural capital assets over the next year as well. It would be great to be on the cutting edge of that topic. Thanks. Okay, so my last question is this. It's a small item, but I think it's important, and I'm not sure where it fits. So we had a letter to council a few weeks ago, and the mayor met with the West Vancouver Arts Council, who are specifically requesting an increase in their fee-for-service contract. It's a very small amount of money. It's $10,606 to be precise, I believe, to bring them up to just inflation since 2000 and I can't remember. Don't quote me. Thank you. So 2007, and I would like to know. I believe that members of council who I've heard from all support this increase, and so I'd like to know how that becomes part of this budget. Do I need to make an amendment to these recommendations before us today?
Thank you, Ms. Gordon, and I do concur. In talking to members of council, I believe there is very strong support.
So, Your Worship, if council makes an amendment and asks to have this put into the budget, we would certainly put it there, and that would probably change. It's a very small amount, so it would change the increase from 4.7 to 4.71, and then 2% or whatever subsidy. You know, it can be done. Let me just put it that way. I'll just say that ordinarily what we do, I mean, things come up all the time. In order to get the budget done, we have to, at some point, kind of draw a line and say, okay, we're not accepting any more new things into the budget right now. At that point, we start making a list, and when we come forward with the budget revision, that's the list. All those things would be on the list. In this particular case, I think if council wants to indicate support for this now, the appropriate thing would be to make a motion, and then we will incorporate it into the current budget. Thank you.
I'll ask someone to consider that motion after we get through the questions, and Councillor Cassidy.
Thank you. Just something you said earlier sort of twigged my memory, and if you could please refresh it, how much did we actually borrow to renovate the municipal hall?
Your Worship, I'll just look this up. I don't want to. Agenda items, surplus, maybe that might- yeah. So what did we originally borrow, though? This is the outstanding balances. Do we know what we originally borrowed? Yeah. So 23 million plus 5.6 is 23.
That's the outstanding balance, isn't
It's
it?
about $29 million, Your Worship.
I'm sorry, we borrowed 29 million?
That's correct, Your Worship.
All right, and how much do we still owe?
2023.
We have 4 plus 18, about 23 million.
So 23 million. And how much do you think, if you were putting your best guess hat on, because when we borrow money, we get an inordinately lower rate than if you were doing out with an individual borrowing money. So what rate, if you were to do a guesstimate, do you think we'd get in renewing our...
Well, the last time I looked at the MFA rates, they were around 5.8, 5.9. We would not be borrowing until, or renewing, I should explain, we borrowed this in 2 tranches. We borrowed around 6 million, and then we borrowed the balance. So we would be renewing, I think, in 2027. Yeah. And I'm not sure what the rates will be in 2027, but I imagine that they might be higher because I think inflation is going to, I think with the tariff uncertainty and all of the other economic uncertainty, it's almost bound to have an effect on inflation. So inflation, that means probably rates will go up.
Okay. So firstly, I'd like to thank yourself, Ms. Gordon, and all of staff for all the hard work that you've done. And I would like to thank the individuals who came forward with their time, who are all volunteers for this committee. I'm most appreciative of all your work. Mr. Patterson, Mike, John Robertson, Michael Everson, Joel James, Graham McIsaac, and Don Smith. I want to say thank you very, very much. Also, did you actually get an opportunity to read your summation, your recommendation? I don't think you actually read out your final page of what your summation, your recommendation is.
But it is on the screen.
I know, but it's wonderful to have a point said verbally. It drives the point home. Maybe some of us aren't as good readers as others.
Okay.
So I would like to
Gentlemen,
hear it verbally,
if you want to put it
please.
back up, and I'm going to go to Councillor Watt.
Hello?
But I am also anxious, if the presentation's done, if you wanted to leave your recommendation up, but I do want to make sure that I recognize people who have come here this evening that may wish to address council, and I would like to give them an opportunity as well. So that is the recommendation of our Finance and Revenue Advisory Committee.
Excuse me, I would like it read. And I only have had one question, and maybe this is my second, but I would like it read to reinforce their point of all the work that they have done. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentlemen, you've had a request.
Okay, thank you. 2 parts to it. In terms of the property tax increase, our recommendation is that council adopt a 3% property tax increase consisting of a 2% operating levy increase and a 1% asset levy increase. As Ms. Gordon pointed out, the operating deficit on the basis of the operating budget is 4.48 million, which would, in the absence of any other mitigation, would require a 4.7% increase in the operating levy. So in order to achieve the 2% increase in the operating levy, the operating deficit of 4.48 million would have to be reduced by 2.57 million, leaving the deficit at the balance being 1.91 million, which is what would be covered by a 2% operating levy increase. So in order to deal with that 2.57 million, we would recommend that 3 things, A, B, and C. The first 2 of them are exactly the same as the staff report, or virtually the same as the staff report. The elimination of the Innovation Fund, which would provide $953,000. I almost said million, but I caught myself in time there. A reduction in the wage contingency reserve, which is in the existing budget was $3 million. So recommending that be reduced by $1 million to $2 million. That differs slightly, I believe, from the staff report that focused on it being a 1% tax reduction, which equates to $953,000. So the difference is insignificant. But the third, which is really the difference between a 3.0% tax increase and a 3.7% tax increase, is using a portion of last year's surplus to offset against the operating deficit rather than it being transferred into reserves. That would utilize approximately $620,000, which we understand is well within what is at the present time forecast to be the surplus for 2024.
Thank you very much. And with that, Councillor Lambert. Sorry, I've got Councillor Watt and then Councillor Lambert.
Actually, I had hit my mic to put forward the motion and put in a friendly amendment reflecting.
Okay. Let's, if we can have an
Civil.
opportunity just to let public input
Oh,
take place.
certainly.
And then Councillor Lambert, you have a...
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I just had a point of clarification on the municipal hall renovation. The figures you talked about were for the renovation of this Phase 2. They don't refer to the original Phase 1, the Police Services Municipal Hall building, or do they? Because we borrowed money, and did we retire the debt?
No, I was referring to the entire project.
Okay.
All
Okay,
phases.
That's important
Yeah.
for everyone to understand. That wasn't for just this portion of the building, because we used some of the proceeds that were supposed to pay for that building to buy the Gordon Avenue project. I don't know if that was before your time, but on the sale of the Grosvenor.
I know
Some-
that was discussed,
Yeah.
but in fact, that transaction had taken place already before I got here. So at that
Okay.
point,
Thank you. Just a point of clarification.
other funds had needed to be found to complete the project.
Thanks very much. Just because I recognize there are members of the public here, if anyone wanted to make any comments, this would be the opportunity. Yes, sir. Sorry. Oh, do we have a speakers list?
We do have a speakers list, Mayor Sager. The two names on them, not to preempt the gentleman who's sitting at the podium, but the two names on there are John Robertson, who I believe is a member of the committee, and the second name is someone who wishes to participate via WebEx, which I know you prefer to do towards the end of comment.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Mayor and Council. So I feel compelled to make some comments about the budget and the
Could we have your name for the record, sir?
Mike
I
Philippoff.
didn't introduce him. I'm sorry, Mr. Philippoff.
So I'm going to focus on the asset levy. Like over the last 10 years, Isabel Gordon has done a fantastic job in, bringing this to council and to all of us to get our assets back on track. So what's happened is that almost every year, the words deferred maintenance have come up in these meetings, etc. And here we are in talking about deferred maintenance again. So I really urge you to go with the 2% increase. And actually, it should be even higher because we are really behind on maintaining our infrastructure, our roads, our sewers, buildings, as Isabel points out. I mean, this is really a big deal. As a matter of fact, I did my own calculations. In the last 10 years, we're behind about $30 million in maintaining our assets. And I believe our assets are $1 billion, Isabel. So where we spend, where Isabel says we have to spend about $20 million a year to maintain them, that's what we should do. And we can't keep on deferring. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Philippop. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Mayor Sager. There is another name on the list for this item before the WebEx name. David Marley has signed up for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Marley. And then we'll go to WebEx and then.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, Mr. Marley, can you, just for the benefit of everyone, just move the microphone? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I just have three things to say. First of all, I wanted to compliment the mayor and council on creating this committee, on equipping it with very appropriate terms of reference, and on recruiting some superb people to serve on it. So thank you very much. I also wanted to thank the members of the committee, the mayor, Councillor Watt, and the volunteers in particular for what I consider to be an absolutely superb piece of work in their report. And I understand that it took a tremendous amount of time and effort to produce with the help of the staff. So again, compliments to all concerned. I've lived here for 34 years. Followed the budget more or less closely from time to time. Never seen anything quite as good as this. So kudos to all concerned. The third thing I wanted to say was to encourage council to adopt the recommendation of the committee with respect to the operating levy of 2% for the principal reason that, as I think our Director of Finance pointed out, the utility rates, because of Metro, not because of the district, because of Metro, are going up, I understand, in the order of 41% this year, the Metro's portion of the property taxes with respect to the North Shore wastewater treatment plant. So that's a real pressure, as our Director of Finance pointed out, on people. And you have to look at the whole. And the other reason I would suggest that the 2% is appropriate, when I looked at the report by the committee, there's a very interesting table on page 8 that refers to the district's operating expenses over time. And over the last 8 years, on average, the operating expenses of this district have gone up 5.6%, whereas the cost of inflation has gone up 2.9% on average over those 8 years, and we haven't had population growth. So our operating costs have been going up almost double the cost of inflation. I don't think that can continue. I definitely don't think it should continue. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marley. I'm now going to turn to that time when it's up to council to make a decision, and I think Councillor Watt wanted to make it. Oh, sorry, there is a WebEx. Sorry about that.
Thank you very much. I've just promoted the caller, Cynthia Mon. You should be able to unmute your microphone at this point. And you turn on your camera if you wish. You've got 3 minutes to address council.
Okay, you can hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council, and thank you for the opportunity to comment on the budget related to the use of the environmental levy. This is on a very much a practical level. Based on recent funding requests, the environmental levy is not being used for the purposes set out by Mayor and Council in the environmental levy bylaw. It's described on page 8 of this proposed 2025 operating and capital budgets document. As written, the bylaw is to be used first and foremost to protect our West Vancouver natural environment and our natural capital assets, estimated to be valued at around $3.2 billion, from events such as we are now experiencing, atmospheric rivers and resulting landslides and heat domes. However, the levy is now steadily being used to fund issues that are last or non-existent in the environmental levy bylaw. For example, to fund what I understand are federal and provincial responsibilities, such as the amount of greenhouse gas emissions and staff research into hot, arid climates like LA that experience wildfire climates in direct contrast to our predominantly rainforest oceanic climate challenges. Based on expert studies, this misdirection of the environmental fund is resulting in harm to our rainforest natural environmental assets. In particular, spending money to encourage or advise property owners to cut down their trees is, no matter how well intended, to cut down one of their and our community's protective barriers from landslides and heat domes. Working trees, shrubs, and grasses both absorb rainwater so that it does not overflow our water system, causing floods and landslides and soil erosion, but they provide cooling temperatures to avoid heat domes. These are well-established scientific facts. An extensive USDA study, I lost my spot there. An extensive USDA study of various climates found that the risk of a wildfire in the nearest forested coastal environment to West Vancouver was low. It also found, unsurprisingly, LA's wildfire risk is very high. Also unsurprisingly, in our climate, where the risk of wildfire is low, according to UBC research, the risk of a landslide is high. Worse, in not focusing our resources to protect our natural assets, we are falling far behind environmental protections compared to other metro region municipalities who are protecting their trees 20 centimeters and greater and having free tree planting, etc. And no doubt this laxness towards our environment is impacting, sorry, lost my space, spot again, is impacting the clogged hazard tree removal process, which is also a significant expense. In my view, a way to reduce these process costs is to enforce the requirement that for every tree cut down, 3 to 5 more mature trees, not flowers or tiny shrubs that take decades to grow, need to be planted.
That's
This
time,
will-
ma'am.
Are you able to wrap up your comments?
I have about one more sentence here, yeah. Is that okay?
Sure, one more sentence.
This will eliminate by requiring 3 to 5 more mature trees to be planted. This will eliminate the aesthetic tree removal request from the queue, freeing up staff to address hazard tree removals for the benefit of everyone at less cost. Actual hazard trees will be removed and new working trees planted to protect us from landslides and heat domes. Thank you.
Thanks very much for your comments. Thanks for joining us. I'll now turn it over to Councillor Watt. Oh, sorry, Mr. Patterson, did you wish to?
Did Mr. Robertson not have
Robertson,
a?
I think I'll pass, because all the comments I was going to make have been well covered by Don Smith and our candidate.
Thank you.
So, yeah, if nobody objects, I'd like to put forward the motion, but with a friendly amendment that we accept the recommendations of the Finance and Revenue Advisory Committee and set the tax rate, the operational at 2%, and leave the, as recommended by Ms. Gordon and the committee, and leave the asset levy at 1 for a total of 3. So I had crafted, and also as per Councillor Gambioli, as she and I both sit on the Arts Advisory Committee, we are both, acutely aware of information, a report that will come to this council in, I believe, the next meeting or sometime this month. And their workload is going to significantly increase, and it's been well over a decade since they've had even so much as a cost of living increase. So I feel it's, imperative that we weave that into this in whatever way would be appropriate.
Well, I think if your motion was to move the recommendation from the Finance and Revenue Committee and ask staff to include, it's a very small amount of money.
Yeah, it was 10,000, how much?
10,606.
$10,606.
$606 to,
I'd like to have those separated because I'm not supporting.
Okay,
okay.
so should we separate it into 3 parts?
Well, let's do the art request first.
Okay, so I would like to recommend that council support a $10,606 increase, how to word this one, to the Arts Council budget for the 2025, going forward.
Yes. In the fee-for-service
In the
agreement.
fee-for-service agreement.
Thank
It
you.
takes a village.
Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Cassidy. Is there any discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Contrary, that is carried. Okay,
Okay.
and now if you make the motion, and it'll be subject to, let's see if your motion passes.
So I guess we're separating the operational from the asset
Do
levy,
you want separation on both, Councillor Gambioli?
or all together?
I think it would be great if we would separate.
Okay, we
Okay.
have separation.
So friendly amendment that the proposed 2% operational levy as suggested by the Finance and Revenue Committee be approved, which includes the use of operational reserves, innovation fund, and wage contingency reserve fund to reduce the levy increase from 4.7 to 2%.
Is there a seconder? Thank you. Any discussion? Oh, Councillor Gambioli.
Yeah, I think there's a discussion in the sense that, staff have recommended 2.7%, which does not include the, I don't have it anymore, I guess the 620 coming out of the surplus, thank you. So is there no discussion about that difference? Why we would not want to do that, I think.
I think Ms. Gordon has indicated that if that was the wish of council, that it is achievable. And I do really respect the view that this is a tough year for our community. We don't know a lot of things that are going to come forward, and the utility costs are going to be high. And so
I think that what I heard Ms. Gordon say is that the other two funds being drawn down or collapsed in this case was an unusual decision, but it could be taken in this unusual year. But I did not hear support for using up a good chunk of the surplus.
Ms. Gordon?
Through you to Councillor Gambioli, the reason that staff are not recommending using the 2024 surplus is, first of all, we're not completed the 2024 financial statements, so we don't really know exactly what the surplus would be. I don't disagree with the committee's assertion that, in fact, the amount that they're suggesting being used will probably be there, but I don't know that for sure. So I can't really recommend using it when I don't have the numbers. And again, what I would recommend doing with that surplus is setting it aside for the paying down debt. So when we had the number, first of all, I'm very conservative. I would like to have the number before I recommend using it. And then secondly, when we have it, I think we have to also meet that obligation. So that was staff's recommendation. However, if council wished to go and with the committee's recommendation, we will make that work. We will make it work. And like I say, I'm reasonably certain that there will be enough surplus to cover that amount. And if not, then perhaps we would be coming back with a suggestion that we would further dip into the wage contingency account. It's not going to be much of a difference, so that would be something that finance would in fact do.
Thank you. Councillor Watt? No, the question's been called. Councillor Watt, unless you've got something else.
I'll hold my comments.
All right, the question has been called. All those in favor? Contrary? Councillor Watt's motion? Yes, I'll call it. Councillor Lambert called the question. So I will call the question. All those in favor? Contrary? Motion is.
So 2 are contrary and 2 are in favor.
And the mayor and Councillor Thompson, I didn't see you vote.
Sorry, now I'm totally confused. I thought you were calling the question because you wanted to pass the motion.
Mayor Sager, if I could clarify, I did see 2 hands go up in opposition to the question which was called, so it's carried by a vote of 4-2.
Yeah. Motion is carried. Motion is carried.
So you voted in favor of the motion, the 2 of you?
Yeah, I'll go with it.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind commenting because I think I'm pretty practical and conservative. And I actually say my common sense would be to go with the 2.7 recommended by staff and a 2-point asset levy. But I also feel this year is extraordinary. And we've got a really innovative way of looking at things. I'm not sure that this is going to be a pattern we're going to create for the future. But it does seem like an exciting time. We've got a staff that seems really committed to creating efficiencies, which is really the fundamental part of what we're trying to achieve here. You've got a council that promised that we would make sure we're spending money effectively. And I think the only way we can actually achieve that is to create this tension and go into this year with an open mind and see how it works.
Okay, sorry, just clarifying where we're at. Okay, that was, and then I need a motion on the asset levy, please.
Yep. And I'd like to recommend that the proposed 2025 asset levy increase of 1% be approved.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Second. Any discussion? Councillor Snyder.
Just a quick comment on this. This one's really tough for me. I hear all of the comments. I agree. This is an extraordinarily difficult year. There's no question about it. The utilities and the North Shore wastewater, the fees that are going to be levied on all the people in West Vancouver is extraordinary this year. Obviously, we're having some international concerns that we really have no idea what the results are going to be. The one thing I can say on this is, the FRAC committee members and the member of our staff, Ms. Gordon, and her team, I can tell you, are all smarter than I am. And if both of them are able to and are prepared to recommend the 1%, which is what I am hearing from Ms. Gordon, and we've heard from the FRAC members, I'm going to reluctantly agree that, as I say, those people are all much smarter than I am, and if I had a choice, I would consider a compromise, and maybe as opposed to 2%, it would be a 1.5% asset levy as a compromise to try and move forward. But just my comments, I have a real struggle with this one.
Thank you. Councillor Gambioli.
Well, just to explain, my concern with the 2% operating levy is, I think we're cutting too close to the bone for my liking. And if we're going to agree to use an extra 620 from the surplus, it should be going into this asset levy to create. To deal with this year, if anything, I would prefer to see it there. So I agree with Councillor Snyder. I'm okay with 1%, but I would have thought that it would have been better used here than to, reduce the operating levy.
Thank you, Councillor Gambioli. I think both the staff will I would follow the recommendation of both the committee and the staff on the asset levy, and look forward to working with our Finance and Revenue Committee over the ensuing year to really study to ensure that we are doing the right thing and meeting our needs. And I'm quite confident in the ability of both staff and this very strong committee to do that. So I'll call the question. All those in favor? Contrary? That carries unanimously. Oh, sorry, Councillor Lambert is opposed. Thank you. And are there any members of the public that have any questions?
We do have 3 members of the public signed up for the public questions and comments period, Mayor Sager.
Thank you.
Sharon Habib, Merle Beckerman, and Pierre Coupy, I believe.
Thank you.
First name on the list is Sharon Habib.
Thank you for joining us this evening and for your patience.
Oh, no, thank you. I was just sitting here listening, thinking I should really start by thanking you all for this thankless job that you've taken on to govern our municipal area. And it just gets more and more complex, and often you have to deal with very grumpy, rude residents. So I am very appreciative of your taking on the jobs that you have taken on. And so I'm not going to talk to you about the arts facility, surprise, surprise. I'm here because I'm so concerned about democracy at the moment, and I think we probably all are. It's a very precarious time in our world. And I think with my professional background is communications. And so that's a core tenet of democracy among many others. And so when I think of democratic governance, communication is a key best practice with constituents. And I know you've got a ton going on, and I know that it's not always possible to go through consultation with the public. I know that this is a council that likes to get things done. I'm all for that. Things can get mired in consultation and just die there. So there is a balance. And I feel that with your commitment to get things done, which I commend you for, it's not a criticism. I do feel that as a council, you might err on the side of not communicating with us often enough. So often we hear about decisions after they're made, and then left to wonder how they got made, and perhaps expected to just assume that the rationale was good and sound. It probably was, maybe it wasn't, we don't know. So my request to you is to talk to us residents more often. You don't have to consult us on every decision you make, but certainly on the big ones, and certainly on the ones where you know they're hot button issues in the community. Give us a chance to be trusted as part of the conversation. And I know sometimes you have time pressures, things move, there's an opportunity facing you. Maybe there's creative ways in those situations just to consult a little more. So that's my request of you, is to tell us before the decision rather than after, just a little more, if that's okay. And thank you.
Thanks very much.
All right.
The next name on the list is Merla Beckerman.
Ms. Beckerman, really nice to see you out this evening.
Thank you.
Thanks for all of your years in contributing to our community, particularly through the arts.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Merla Beckerman. I'm a resident of West Vancouver. I've lived here 50 years now, and I started out in this particular chair in 2008 when I sat with Gordon Smith, a highly respected artist and arts advocate, when the mayor of the time asked me if I would put together and chair a committee to find a location and to set out some guidelines for an arts center. And it was my pleasure to do that. So since that initial 2008 committee, I think I've sat on 4 different committees, all with the same goal. So I should have been very, very excited when last Monday there was going to be an announcement about an arts museum. And I'm really sorry to say we were very surprised about and when I say we, I have the backing of a lot of the people in the arts community. I come here as a representative. We were surprised by the announcement, and we were very, very disappointed that there was no transparency and everything seemed to have been fait accompli. And of course, the site is the other concern that we would like to address. Now, maybe this whole presentation or me talking here is after the fact, but I owe it to all the people that have put in years and years of energy, effort, and their expertise to come and speak to you just to hear me out. I appreciate that.
I should just say, Ms. Beckerman, I think it's important to recognize that, and I'm sure you appreciate tonight when you heard the price we paid for this particular gorgeous facility, that an opportunity came up and the council unanimously believed that that was a worthwhile. This does not replace the dream that you and so many people in the community have worked on. And in fact, through the process, I've actually been out speaking to people who may be potential donors for the renovations, and that has led to a at least verbal commitment from one person to actually fund what you dream to see happen.
All that said, there hasn't been any public consultation on this particular scheme or deal that you're doing right now, and that is problematic. Things we were mostly concerned about was the lack of transparency and good governance, and the accuracy of the communication. There was one statement, and then there was conflicting statements after that, and then the suitability of the space as a replacement for the Gertrude Lawson House. And we want explanations and we want clarifications, and I see you're trying to do that. We all agree the West Van Museum needs a new home. That's been apparent for a long time. Gertrude Lawson has served its purpose. It was never supposed to be an art gallery. It's a living room and a dining room. However, moving it away from the center of the community to a refitted building without a clear source of funding, in a location lacking in walkability, ease of transit, and proximity to schools, shops, and retail outlets does not make any sense. It has ignored all the expressed wishes of the community, and we've gone through years and years of consultations, of public input, of workshops. We've hired consultants. We've had some excellent reports.
That's time, ma'am.
And there's been a lot of work put into this already, and that seems to have been completely ignored with this last decision.
That's time, ma'am.
All of those studies came to the point that people are very, very fond of our West Van Museum. It's done an amazing job. It doesn't have Class A space. That's what we're aiming for. It doesn't have education places and lecture halls or even a hall where you can have your birthday parties or something. It was supposed to be a gathering place, and we don't see this Horseshoe Bay, which is not in the center of the city, as fulfilling any of that. And to have energy and resources go to that stopgap Band-Aid cover up, it just doesn't make sense. I'm so sorry. It is not a replacement for Gertrude Lawson House. Gertrude Lawson is actually more central and does fulfill more of the criteria.
Thank you, Ms. Beckerman.
Okay, just a little bit more.
You have exhausted your time. If you could wind up.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you then. I know your hearts are in the right place. I just think this is a poor decision, and we're insulted.
Okay. Ms. Beckerman, I think some of us on council would also feel insulted by your comments. Horseshoe Bay is a commercial district. There are schools nearby. 6 million people go through that part of our community every year. There is rapid bus out there. There are 60 parking stalls directly across from the new facility. There are none at Gertrude Lawson. This is not intended to be the permanent final fix. It's a short-term, perhaps, fix. It's something for the arts. There's been a lot of studies done and nothing accomplished. At least now we have some additional space at a very, very fair price. And we'll look forward to seeing you at the opening of the facility. And I can tell you it has generated a lot of interest from donors. One of the donors, who is prepared to fund a Class A facility, highly commended this step. Thought it was a wonderful step for community artists. It's not intended to be a Class A art gallery. Councillor Watt, would you like any other comment?
No, nobody was insulting Horseshoe Bay. It is lovely. I was out there on Saturday, actually, and it can be a very vibrant place. It is not filling the criteria that was set up for any museum or art gallery. And we all know that site selection is one of the major considerations for any museum or any arts and cultural facility.
Thank you. Sorry, we're not, I made a mistake and I apologize by getting into a debate. That's not the opportunity. Tonight is the point for comment and questions, and we hear your comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and I do appreciate the opportunity to come here, and I will report back to all the people that have been talking to me.
No,
I think Mayor Sager said it all.
Okay. All right, thank you.
The final name on our speakers list, Mayor Sager, is Pierre Coupy.
It's actually Coupe. Well, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to come and make my comment as well, and I'd like to echo what Merle Beckerman said. I've also participated for a long time on consultative committees looking for a new space for the West Vancouver Art Museum. And I have been impatient with the length of time it has taken, and so you would expect me to be really excited that now we've got something. Well, I'm not that excited about it, to tell the truth. And this has nothing to do with Horseshoe Bay. As I said to the North Shore News, I love Horseshoe Bay. My family and I lived there for a year while we were building our new house on Sentinel Hill. And I think it would be lovely to have an art gallery there. And I think I like your last comment, Mayor Sager, that it would be a community gallery. But I don't think I see that as a replacement for the West Vancouver Art Museum, which should be central to all of West Vancouver. I don't see a refitted restaurant as the best thing for a permanent new West Vancouver Art Museum, which has a mandate to serve the whole community. Horseshoe Bay, as I said, is a lovely place. I went out to go and revisit the boathouse after I first heard about this surprise announcement that it would be taking the place of a new West Vancouver Art Museum. And I walked around the building, I took a lot of pictures, and I didn't see 60 parking spaces there. I found it very hard to find parking at that particular spot. There are huge apartment buildings right there.
There is a public parking garage right adjacent to this.
Oh, a public
building.
parking garage, which I didn't see. I didn't see any sign for it.
You just
But
drive
anyway,
down.
we're
turn
not
left.
in a debate though, are we?
No, we're not.
No.
But I just want to clarify that.
Fair enough. Nevertheless, I still don't think that it's going to be an accessible space for the majority of West Vancouverites. I would love to be in love with this proposal, but I also think that we deserved a lot more information, transparency, and consultation before it was being made, this decision. I just had the pleasure of listening to all of these people speak about a budget, and I appreciate the enormous amount of good work that all of you are doing. And I thought it would be lovely if we could have the same kind of motion on the floor in this council and budget and consultation and debate about whether that is the best place for a new West Vancouver Art Museum. I don't understand why that didn't take place. If it's merely a business decision that has to be made in haste because an opportunity comes up, I don't think that's sufficient to justify a new art center, a new gallery there. I still believe that the West Vancouver deserves a purpose-built art center in the heart of the community. And I hear you suggest that this idea does not replace that possibility of a Class A building.
That's
But my
time, sir.
fear is that it will become very difficult for a new center to be built if the West Vancouver Art Museum is brought out there. So thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you. And I would, as I call a motion to adjourn, just say once again that as a result of talking to some of the donors in our community, there is, I believe, an incredible opportunity that will come forward very shortly. Could I ask for a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor? Contrary, carried. Thank you.